welcome to the November meeting, the DIY and everything.
Well, thank you all for coming. So we've all made it through a season. So for the new beekeepers, congratulations on still being here, and hopefully most of us will have bees. A quick introduction to everybody. There are officers. The year is coming to an end, so we're going to have some transition in the officers. With the most prominent one being Mark, who is going to come up front here in 2026 and take my role. I'm going to go sit next between Charlie and Tony back there. You guys are, no, they're shaking their head. No, we don't want you there. Tony's like, no, you're not coming there. Maybe I'll sit back there with Patrick. I'm going to sit somewhere in the back row. I'm going to sit someone in the back row. And there is an open, a lot of the officers, thankfully, are going to be returning in their roles. So the transition will be easy because, you know, there'll be people that know what they're doing, but we are looking for another vice president. So there's two vice presidents, and we have one open. So anybody interested in becoming a vice president of the office of the club, raise your hand right now. Okay, Mark.
George, why don't you just tell people what they might be
Well, the vice
president.
Well, what does the vice president do? Why don't you say what the vice president does?
Well, I don't think the vice president did what I did before I became vice president, because it was something that George said, boy, I really want help with the meetings. And I said, I can do that. I'll run for vice president. I'll help you with the meetings. So I kind of created this thing. I would love to have help. So it was split between two people. Mark was also a VP, and I know he did stuff with technology. So in my opinion, if there's any way that you can help out, if you have a unique skill, that's great, unless there's something that the new president wants the VP to do.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Which is whatever you can do to
help
help out.
You are. Well, number one is to help build the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the most critical thing that we do that affects the most people is what we is how we run the meetings, you know, who's doing presentations, what the plan is, and then how to fix it when it gets sideways.
So the commitment would be to come to the meetings, not, you don't be all, I mean, come to the meetings. And then I assume Mark's going to continue, we have once a month officer and committee lead meeting where the officers and the committee leads meet.
When is that meeting?
That meeting is
the Friday after this meeting.
The Friday after this meeting
normally
at 5:30 start, but that's flexible. But we meet as a team once a month to go over whatever the program is for the upcoming month.
That can be via Zoom if you can't be there in person.
So that's via Zoom too. So I mean, the commitment is, and it's important because I think as president of the club, having done it for a few years now, having a team, especially some strong vice presidents, definitely makes the position more doable. So again, the opportunity's there. If you're interested in doing that role, you probably want to talk to Mark about that.
And to Donna, if you want to find out what that role
or Donna, I apologize.
Yeah. No, to Donna to find out what she did. To me, come talk to me to talk about what it is. You know, let's set those expectations up front. Let's not find out about them, you know, months later like Donna did.
And then we're gonna have a new primary money person next year. So, you know, we'll say, you know, Michelle's going to take, and Howard's going to assist. So Howard's going to change roles and from going primary treasurer to assistant, and then Michelle's going to step up into that challenging role. So we're grateful that she'll be an addition to the officers. So next slide. As you're aware, the past couple of years I've run everything through the committee. Again, the president decides how they do the day-to-day operations of the club, basically. So, you know, I've chosen over 5 years to run it through committee. If we have committee, then we do program. If we don't have committee, we don't do program. I'm not sure how Mark's going to run it, but, you know, we definitely need help on delivering programs. I assume he's going to do it similar because he made this slide. So, you know, you can see these are all the things the club does, right? The beginner education programs, bee chat, community outreach, entertainment, grants, horticulture, queen team, women's bee group. And you can see some of the people have committed already to being involved for next year, and some of the positions are open. So these are critical. So if you see yourself fitting into one of those roles, I'm sure we would gladly take you. Again, the commitment is the once a month planning meeting, and then whenever you're program is up for that time, right? And again, no committee lead is sort of expected to do it by themselves. We want a group. I should have put conference up there. You know, for 2026, as you know, we're going to have an in-person conference. Carissa's going to lead that effort, thankfully. And Carissa did have our first kickoff conference committee meeting last night, of which I think 11 or 12 people showed up. So that was good. We need more, don't, but it was good to have that. And there were a bunch of, it wasn't just me, Howard, and Chris.
But was that recorded? Can we go back and watch it?
It wasn't recorded. Somebody else asked the same.
Because I meant to be there, but I was busy.
Torture to go back and watch the recording of the planning meeting. But Donna, there's another one on Monday. And then we're gonna do a follow-up on this Friday. So, and we just did venue planning. Like there's just gonna be a bunch of people calling venues. So
Okay.
It's much.
Okay.
So again, Monday,
What time?
6 p.m. as like that's for the people who couldn't make Friday. And then I think Fridays, if it works for everybody, again, it's flexible. We'll meet Friday at 6 before we chat.
Via Zoom.
Via Zoom.
And George, the conference is on there.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my bad.
No, that's good.
Right.
You spelled my name wrong, but I guess that's
So,
okay because I still.
A lot of you in the room don't remember or weren't part of the club when we did our in-person conference. I mean, our in-person conference was usually successful. We did it at Westchester University, among some other places. We would have 300 people in person. You know, where it will be in 2026 since we're restarting, we'll see. But I have complete faith in Carissa to make this happen, and I think it'll be really awesome, honestly. So it's good to get that back. So again, Chris is looking for help. We're all looking for help. Next. Couple thank yous. Honestly, the club doesn't run without a whole bunch of thank yous behind it. We are having our board of director elections today. We had 2 people stand up to be on the board. Thank you. You know, without that service, we would be struggling. So, you know, Chris is sitting right here. Chris, who is assistant treasurer, who stepped up to run for the board, and Patrick, who is on the board, but is rerunning because he loves it so much.
Please vote for up to 2 people.
You can vote for 2 people.
Get 2 seats up.
And Janet, who will be coming off. Janet, who will be coming off the board, who
Sounds like you just volunteered for something.
volunteered for something.
Community lead?
And Janet, you've done 3 years on the board, right?
Yes.
3 years on the board. Janet's term is up, and she will be coming off the board. And thank you for that service. The board does a tremendous behind the scenes kind of work that none of us see, but you know, keeps me in line, keeps the president in line, and makes sure that you know the operation is ran as smoothly as possible. Which at times is not easy, believe it or not. So thank you for your time, Janet. The apprentices, I mean, there's a handful of apprentices that come out to the Cheslin Nuke Yard every week or every other week. Sean's one of them. We do a tremendous job educating there, getting the nukes ready for winter. We have 14 going into winter. We made 20 some splits that all went out locally that are using Ed's genetics. So it's all a good program. And I enjoy that so much. And I thank the people that come out who are learning, who bring the energy to that program. It's much appreciated. And that's a good thing. The web redesign is 98% done. You know, those of you who've logged on to the website recently probably noticed things look a little bit different. We're having a little bit of struggle with some stuff I don't completely understand about getting it to look completely new. And we are working on that. But soon you'll see a beautifully new website that has all new pages that looks beautiful, that is beautiful. We're just not quite there yet. But it will get there. We talked about Carissa already leading the 2026 conference. That is no easy job. A lot of work, and many hands make light work. So please help with Carissa. Howard, Howard. What would we do without Howard? Howard's horrible beekeeping and his wonderful treasure. Howard stepped in, you know, after Jack was treasurer for many, many years and really took this job on in a bit of a pinch, and has done a wonderful job reorganizing the work being done and keeping the financials straight in this club and dealing with
Trying
me,
to keep George alive.
trying to keep me from not messing things up. So again,
Good job, Howard.
Howard is
Nice trailer you got there.
and Michelle, I'm sure will do just as awesome of a job in Howard's footsteps. The 20 people who showed up and laughed at me at the wood paste event, you know, for those of you who showed up, that was fun. You know, we were out there in the dark, sort of rendering wax and making wood paste. So, thank you all for coming, and hopefully you get to use your wood paste. And that's what makes the club great, right? I mean, I really think those are the times that are memorable, that people remember, and that people come out and get involved and do things. So we're really encouraging more of that going forward. And unfortunately, Monica, who all of us know and love so much for her energy and enthusiasm, has had some family things come up, and she's not going to be able to sort of in the short term help out the club very much. So we kind of had a hole for the holiday party in December, which is our next meeting. So instead of our December sit and listen to George meeting, it's going to be December come and have some fun and eat meeting, which will be the second Saturday of December. But instead of starting at 9 in the morning, I think we're going to start at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and sort of have a celebration food-ish kind of thing. Hopefully Tony will be available to bring his meat. I haven't asked him yet, but he said, why not? You know, he'll check his calendar. But anyway, details to come shortly on that, but that'll be the last event of the season, our holiday party. So, and Michelle's stepping up to help lead that. And Michelle always says yes to anything I ask, which is awesome. But we may need some help. So stay tuned for that, for making the holiday party helpful. Next slide. And if I forgot anybody, I truly apologize. You know, if you read the newsletter, after this next meeting's my last meeting, but this meeting is sort of my last meeting to stand up there. I did say that, you know, my goal when I took the presidency on 5 years ago was 2 things, basically: to try to make the club inclusive to anybody who wanted to show up and participate, and to make it educational, right? To make sure that you guys took information that was helpful to keep your bees and to be inclusive. And, you know, I did my best at doing that. And if anybody has felt like that's come up short, I do truly apologize. I know some of you have spoken with me in the past about things that you wish to see different, and I do take each of them to heart and did my best to be as inclusive and educational as possible. So again, thank you all to the members of the CCBA for allowing me to serve in this role. It's not an easy role. You know, we're amongst a history of giants up here, right? Warren Graham, Keith, Merle, you know, and Mark's going to be taking on that role, and whatever support that
Giant step down.
No, it's just different, you know, just different, you know, and it's a hard.
YouTube traditions.
It's speaking just for a second. I'm not counting this in my 5 minutes, but it's a hard role. You know, it's a very hard role to do. You do know you're a 500 member organization, which can do nothing or can do a lot, right? I mean, you can go from nothing to a lot, and the job as president is to try to figure out what to do on that spectrum. You know, do I do nothing? You know, hang out in a basement and have a bunch of beekeepers over and chat and shit for an hour? Or do we, you know, do some event or multiple events a couple of times a month and try to have 1 million partners out there and raise $1 million and all that? And somewhere in the middle is where to sit, right? And the job of the president is to try to figure out where to sit and listen to a variety of different opinions, for sure, right? Everybody has an opinion on where on that spectrum we should sit. And the hardest thing to know is where to sit, honestly. And with because you're all volunteer, and it becomes a lot easier to figure that out as people show up, and as people get involved, and as people volunteer their time and their talents. It becomes easier to do. The hardest moments is when you're sitting back and you don't know how many people are going to show up or how many people are going to help, and am I going to make a decision to do too much or do too little? You know, I don't worry about standing up here and BSing for 15 minutes. That's easy. It's the big picture things that become very difficult. So again, I'm glad my time is done. I will not be back this time. And I look forward to sitting in the back and watching the club continue to grow and to see where it goes in the future. So again, thank you. Next slide. How Jordan's keeping bees alive. You know, when you go into your hive, you guys are gonna get tired of this. Hopefully this has sunk in a little bit. There's 4 things going on in the hive: bees, brood, food, disease, right? That's all that's going on. And when you go into your hive or you don't go into your hive, this is what you should be thinking about. You know, do I have bees in there? And the management decision is match the hive size to the colony size. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But that's relevant for the winter too, right? That's relevant all year long. It's especially relevant for the winter because the cluster size in the winter can vary, right? Your cluster size going into the winter could be 3 frames of bees or it could be a whole box full of bees. And some of that depends on how you've managed your bees through the season. But there's always a range of the number of bees. And surely at this time of year, we're kind of close to the nadir, right? So we have our winter bees produced over the last month or two, and they're the bees that are going to carry you through the winter. Your cluster size may drift a little bit, you know, over the next month or two as it gets cold and some of the bees die off. But where you are today is kind of close to where you're going to be in February when the bees start to make new bees and you get new bee turnover. So you get your winter bee death and your new bees turning over. But you may drift slowly down over the next month or two on bee population. And anything is okay. You know, you could have 3 frames of bees or you could have a box full of bees. It's all okay. But you do kind of want, you're hopefully not going to have 2 frames of bees in a giant hive, and you're hopefully not going to have 10 frames of bees in a nuke box, right? Because that's going to be an issue. Brood, all the hives at Cheslin, all the nukes at Cheslin, all my personal hives are broodless at this point. I saw no cap brood even 2 weeks ago. It all hatched, and to me that seemed early, but I think that's okay. You know, the winter bees are done. There's no forage coming in. There's nothing out there blooming. So the queen and the bees have decided that they're done, and there's no more brood. I do see some. Actually, I have seen brood in a few hives, and I almost think it's abnormal to see late brood. Sometimes when you see late brood, it's a sign that they don't have enough bees in the population. They're trying to boost that population, or sometimes that population is sick. And somehow they know the population's dying off. And again, they're trying to make some bees late and there's brood. The other time when there may be brood is if for some reason you had a supersede your queen or you lost the queen late in the season and now you have a new queen. For some reason, those new queens, when they start laying, sometimes overdo it, honestly, and they lay a lot. And that may be a reason why you see brood. But if you don't see brood, you're not queenless. I had a discussion with somebody who thought they were queenless because they went into the hive and saw no brood a week ago. I said, no, you're probably okay. You know, I mean, that's probably okay right now not to have brood. Now, with that said, some of that depends on your management, right? If you've been feeding bees for a bit, maybe that stimulated the colony to have some brood. But most of us are broodless, I think. Food is a big issue this time of year as far as winter. You're kind of running today. Maybe I'm going to try to. I have some light highs. That's another story that none of you want to hear about. But you know, the window is closing to feed syrup quickly. I'm going to put some syrup on today because I still think it's warm enough and I think they can dry it out pretty quick. But soon, once the daytime temperatures are in the 50s and the nighttime temperatures are freezing, you can't add any more syrup to the hive. So you got to either hope they're heavy enough or add some solid food like fondant on your hives. And then disease. Colonies die in winter for 2 reasons, basically, right? They either run out of food or they have too much disease. And that's why you lose colonies. There's really nothing to do. Well, the last thing we do is in December, probably at the holiday party, we'll have oxalic solution available, or maybe we'll have oxalic powder available. I'm not sure yet what we're going to do, but we all do the dribble or the vaporization in December, right? Because there's no more brood in the hive. All the hives are broodless. All the mites are on the bees. So in December, we use that opportunity to really knock down the mites so that they come out of winter basically as mite-free as possible. Right, so this last mite treatment is always when they're broodless. Now, some of you can do it now if you want, but generally the club does it in December, where we do the oxalic treatment as the last mite treatment to deal with disease. If your hive dies before the new year, it probably dies of disease. If your hive dies after the new year, it probably dies of starvation. We have no idea what this winter is going to be like. Historically, in this neck of the woods, it's been about 30% winter loss. I think as a club, we generally do better because people are here getting educated and know about food and know about disease and know about hive management. If you lose hives, it's not because you're a bad beekeeper, honestly. It may be, but not necessarily. If you lose bees, I would say, you you have to decide if you want to restart next year. And if you want to restart next year, commit to your ongoing education, right? Everyone figures this out. Even Mark figures this out, right? So, Mark lost bees for 5 years, and then he finally 4 years. Sorry, Mark bought bees every spring for 4 years in a row, and he finally figured it out. And now he doesn't lose bees anymore. So usually, there's at some point you figure it out that you're able to continue if you want to. Next slide. Okay. So this is my diversion into my craziness of my brain. So what can overwinter? So on the left is everything that you can overwinter. So and it's all almost correct, right? So you're gonna have people that overwinter and all these configurations, and they all do it successfully, right? So I assume everybody who's here probably has one of these configurations. You can overwinter in a double deep. George Watman, chairman of the board, is overwintering double deeps. Who else is overwintering double deep? Raise your hand. So a bunch. So that's traditional, right? The traditional teaching is a double deep to overwinter. You basically have 2 deeps. Your 1 deep is full of resources or food, so you at least have 80 pounds of honey on the hive, and you overwinter in a double deep. Deep and a medium. How many people are overwintering in that configuration? So there's a bunch of people that are deeps and the mediums. So you basically have your deep, and then you have your 30 pounds in your medium. The only challenge for the deep and the medium is they come up into the medium in the spring, and now you got brood in your medium, and what do you do with that? Not a big deal, but it is, and it's a safe way to overwinter because you're going to generally have enough food. You don't have to worry about them running out of food.
So we have a deep, medium, and we bought a feeding shed.
Mm-hmm.
Do we put that on and leave it on for the duration, or
We'll talk about that. But good thought.
And then we saw something else because I think what we thought we were going to get something that had a mesh at the bottom, but it just came as a spacer because we didn't realize they just put the bonnet right on top of the rings. But now I've seen something else. I think they called it a quilting box, and people are putting pieces of burlap in there with moisture, so that would make even more height. But we're right at that space, so we're kind of worried about stacking.
Oh, it's all good. So you can use no shim, you can use a shim, you can use a shim with a screen on the bottom, you can put nothing in your shim, you can put burlap and wood chips in your shim, it's all good. Okay. Just like everything on the left is all good. How many people are overwintering in a single deep? We got a few out there. Yeah, so single deep is how I overwinter now. Everything goes into a single. You do have a little bit of anxiety that they may run out of food because they're all in a single. For the medium people out there, who run mediums, which is a grand idea, honestly, because you're dealing with less weight. The equivalent is 3 mediums or 2 mediums, whether or not you're equivalent to a double deep or a single deep would be 3 and 2 mediums. How many people run all medium boxes? So we're all split, right? It's kind of cool. Like there's like this group. Running all mediums make a little bit of sense, right? You just have more frames to look at, but you're dealing with lighter boxes. How many people are overwintering in double 5-frame nukes? Bunch of us, right? So this is how we overwinter at Cheslin with the apprentice nukes. We overwinter in double 5 frames. We've been doing that for years, having a 80 to 90% overwintering success. So you can definitely overwinter with 2 5-frames on top of each other.
Is it 2 5-frame deeps?
2 5-frame deeps.
Done overwintered in 2 5-frame mediums.
Well, then you're doing the equivalent of a single 5-frame deep. So how many people are overwintering in a single 5-frame deep? Charlie, raise your hand. The Queen team, Ed is doing that. So the Queen team has all their boxes, all their bees in a single 5-frame deep this year. And last year, right? Last year they were all 5-frame. And what percent overwintered last year? 80? 70. So single 5-frame boxes, 70% overwintered. So that's possible. Anyone overwintering in a single 3-frame nuke? Does that work? Does that work?
It does.
It does work. Ish.
40%-ish.
20%-ish. So that's about as small as I know of anybody overwintering. Is anybody overwintering in 2 frames? Split nukes, 2 framers? No.
Accepted.
Anyone overwintering in 1 frame?
I just look frame inside at that point.
Yeah, does anyone have a box of bees underneath their pillow?
I've got an observation hive with 4D frames.
With 4D frames. Well,
Yeah.
that's
With
a single bee.
inside classroom with a tube going outside.
So the question is, I need some help. So why does all this work? Right? All the people raise their hand. They raise their hand for every single scenario, right? And they're all successful overwintering. So why does it all work?
Preparation going in.
Prep going in, right? Is make sure they're healthy.
Bees do that in the wild.
If bees do that in the wild, they adapt, right?
Don't care.
Bees don't care.
Bugs in a box.
Bugs in a box. I think some of it they kind of know. They kind of know the size of the colony they've been in, and they sort of have set up their resources to survive in whatever size of colony they've been in. I think so. If the colony's been managed in a single for a bit, then it understands its space. And in the wild, it's equivalent of a single deep, right? So that's what Tom Seeley at least says, is that even though I heard someone make an argument against that recently, is like if you look at natural tree cavities, it's the equivalent of a 10 frame deep box, right? So, but it's in a tree, it's not in a hive, so it's insulated. But that's the space that they're generally occupying. Now, someone said, well, they're doing that because that's all that's available, because all new forests only have smaller trees on it. So maybe if you look 500 years ago with the old growth forest, they would have chosen bigger trees and had bigger cavities. I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought.
Or you can see what's in people's attics.
Or you can see, they'll fill up whatever size they want. They'll make huge colonies outside of a house. But I think it all depends on this bee to space ratio, right? If you have 3 frames of bees going into winter, you do not want that colony in a double deep box. That colony has no chance of surviving in the double deep box if it's 3 frames of bees. It's just going to freeze out. It's too much space. They're not going to be able to move around and access the food in there. So for those of you who have a double deep and you go in there and you see 3 or 4 frames of bees, I feel for you a little bit. That colony may not make it. But if you have 3 frames of bees in a single, it's probably going to make it, and it's definitely going to make it if it's in a nuke box for sure. So some of that is that bee to space ratio. So some of this gets into what do bees really need to survive the winter? They need a hive or a space to live. I don't think bees make it in hanging trees up in our neck of the woods. I think if they are hanging comb from a branch, they're probably not going to make the winter. So they need a hive. They need bees, right? The cluster has to have some size to it to survive the winter. There is I don't know what that is. Surely it doesn't have to be big. I generally like to see a minimum of 3 frames of bees to survive the winter. I think if it's less than that, I think it has struggled generating enough heat to keep it alive. Because they do have to generate, even in a small box, they have to generate heat to keep alive. And I think that 3 frame size bees is enough. So if you're going into your hive and you have 3 frames of bees, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And then they need some sort of carbohydrate resource, right? And this is all over the place, right? So some people say you need 80 pounds. Some people say you need 10 pounds. Some people, it sort of is all over the place. And people do it. The queen boxes have 10 pounds maybe of stores in them extra for the winter. And I anticipate 70% of those colonies are going to live. So in a small box with a small colony, you potentially can overwinter on a small amount of food. So it's all right. It's all, there's not, but you have to, if you're running a bigger box, hopefully you have a bigger colony, and that bigger colony needs more food. If you're running a smaller box, then you have a smaller colony with less food. Ultimately, everything comes out of winter and expands quickly in the spring, honestly. So some of this is a decision that you make, right? But there is no, what I've learned is like all of this works. So what are the essentials to make it work? I started beekeeping with screen bottom boards because that's how I was taught. I hate screen bottom boards now, honestly. And I don't say that strongly, but I do. Why do I hate screen bottom boards? Because they remind me of how lazy of a beekeeper I am, right? Because people that run screen bottom boards go out there and pull the bottom and look at it and do diagnostics based on what's on the whiteboard. And they're very smart. You know what I do with my insert on the bottom? It just sits there and it collects hive beetle larvae because I don't pull it out and I don't empty it. So it just reminds you how lazy I'm a beekeeper. So for those of you who love to do that, pull this. Anyone love to do that? Who loves to do that? Ed loves to do that. Janet likes to. You pull that whiteboard and you say, "Oh, that's honey cappings. That's brood cappings. That's wax moth larvae poop, and that's go to it." I mean, but
George, you can tell what frames are uncapping where the brood is emerging just by looking at where those lines of wax cappings are.
you can't. You know what happens if you leave it in for 6 months and don't pull it out? Anyone else do that?
Gotta put an insert in or something.
It all looks the same. A bunch of little white maggots
Oh,
crawling around on the bottom of it.
Then are you using a solid? Because then
Yeah.
it's just sitting at the bottom of your hive.
You're sort of using a solid, but not really, because that flimsy whiteboard is not
No,
really.
if you're not using a screen bottom board, you're using a solid, then it's all sitting at the bottom of
No,
your
they clean it out.
The screen bottom, they can't access.
They can't
it.
access
can't access it. Oh, yeah.
So the stuff falls underneath the screen and the bees can't get to it. Solid bottom boards are completely clean.
Yeah.
At least they should be. If you are running a solid bottom board and you have to agree on the solid bottom board, you got to go talk to Ed and get some of these hygienic bees because the bees generally make their bottom board clean.
That's right.
So
Except during the winter.
yeah, I guess it depends on the size of the colony, right? If you have a large colony, they'll keep that bottom board pretty clean in the winter. If you're running a single, if you're running a double and they're moving up, they're not going down to house clean. But if you run a single, they keep them pretty clean, honestly. So I switched to all solid bottom boards. I also run singles, so I like to keep my brood nest warmer in the spring. So I feel like since I'm always keeping my brood in the bottom box, I feel like that solid does a better job at preventing that bottom of those frames from getting chilled. So I've gone to all solids. I think the industry I think the beekeeper in itself have generally kind of gone more towards solids and away from screens over the last 5 or 10 years. But anyway, so I run solid. This is the most important piece of thing that you put on your hive for the winter is this thing right here. Who does? Don't raise your hand, okay? Because you're going to be embarrassing yourself. This is if you don't have this, you're doing something wrong. I think honestly. I hate to say that, but you're really stressing out your bees if you don't have this at the top of your hive, right? It's so easy to do, right? You go to Home Depot, you get a board. Obviously, a table saw helps, but not essential. And you cut it up, and you just get the thick stuff, 2 inches, and you just put it right at the top of your hive. Ernie, do you have these on your nukes?
Yeah, I use that.
You use this,
Honeybee con board.
which has insulation. So you have insulation at the top of your hive. I used to have 3/4 inch insulation, and now I've gone to 2 inch because I'm just convinced more is better. And ultimately, I think all outer covers, telescoping covers, should have insulation in them. I've noticed that my hives, and I leave this on year round now, so I don't have to think about where my insulation is. It's always on my hives. The bees chew through it. I need to figure that out. But
Cover it with that double
bubble wrap on it, yeah. But I think insulation at the top of the hives is a wonderful idea. I think the colonies are less stressed. They look more productive all year long when you have insulation at the top. This is a must. If you don't have this on your hive, please put it on because you're just stressing your colony out if you don't have it on. So on whatever you have, whether or not you have a double deep, a deep and a medium, single deep, medium, some whatever, I have a shim above the box, an unscreened shim. Now some people have screen shims, right? So they put a screen or they have a screen on the bottom of that. And the reason why that is because when they open up a hive, the bees aren't coming out at them, right? So they can sort of put their fondant or something on the screen without the bees coming out at them. It's a little bit it is a little harder for the bees to eat that fondant when it's not sitting directly on the frames when they have to work through a screen. But it's not the end of the world, right? Yes, George.
They don't fill it with comb in the spring either.
And they won't fill it with foam, right?
If you don't get that shim off early, it makes a mess.
Now, someone else gonna say something? Someone else was, I said, if I'm wrong, please just raise your hand and I'll call on you. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm wrong.
No, I just want to say, if you break the seal this time of year, the bees can't get in there and seal it up again. So you need to look, make sure it comes down solid. If it don't, put a piece of duct tape around it.
Yeah, you want to make sure that, the propolis and stuff like that on the edges of the boxes when you put the shim on is sort of not causing any air gaps between your boxes or between this and this, because they're not going to seal it up at this point, right? It's getting a little too late to go out and forage for propolis. So this is on all my hives. Now this is for me, is a just in case, right? So it's a place for me to put emergency feed if I need it, right? So if I think my colony's running out of food and I don't want it to starve to death, I can put some sugar bricks or some fondant up in this space later on in the season. There's nothing wrong. If you're confident that your hive has plenty of food, you don't need the shim, honestly. For me, the shim is not doing anything else but providing a space for me to put emergency feed if they run out of food in the winter. It's doing nothing else. So if you're confident on your hive weight, you don't need this shim. You don't need it unless you want to run. Now some people will put we talked about the thing. I'll get to you in a second, Howard, because otherwise I'll forget why else people use this shim. They'll make this shim. They'll put a screen on the bottom, and then they'll put all kinds of absorbing material in this space, right? So they'll put burlap or wool blankets or cedar chips or something like that to absorb moisture that the bees are generating through the winter. I think that's kind of fallen out of favor as a method because we generally think that some moisture in the hive is good in the winter because it allows bees to consume it and also take that moisture they consume and then be able to use that honey more effectively because they need to get some water to be able to use the honey stores through the winter. So you're probably not doing any harm if you're still doing a moisture box or anything like that, but I don't know if it's essential to overwintering your hive at all. Again, if you want to do it, I think. Yes.
So I put a 1/4-inch hole in the back of that shim, and then I do my oxalic acid vapor through that from the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see this. All my shims used to have notches in it for top ventilation, and now none of my shims have notches in it for top ventilation. So I sort of don't have any notches in my shims, and I don't vaporize. But sure, if you want to vaporize that way, and then put sort of do you plug it up or do you just leave it open? So Howard still has ventilation at the top of his hive.
1/4-inch hole to it.
It's small. I know it's small. I'm not saying. You can clearly run ventilation a lot. Again, that goes into what can overwinter. A hive with some aeration coming out the top and without. They both can be successfully overwintered. But that's the other thing to do with this shim is to use it to trap moisture. So you basically have the shim, and then you have the insulation, and then you have your outer cover on it. You want to make sure, and I'm sure mine aren't, but you want to make sure, especially in the winter, that you have your hives tilted forward, because it's going to snow and the snow is going to melt. And the last thing you want is the melted snow to be kind of coming into the bottom board and a pool of water sitting on the bottom of your bottom board. So it's probably good if you're not sure, just put a little shim underneath the back of your hive and make sure it's tilted.
If you have a solid bottom board.
If you have a solid bottom board, I guess so. If you have a screen bottom board, it's just going to, it's going to go down onto the whiteboard and run out. Yeah. So yes, if you have a screen bottom board, it's not as essential. There are other things you can do in the winter, i.e. windbreak and hive wrap if you so choose. You can put hay bales, you can put burlap, you can do anything that keeps the wind from blowing on the hives, which is somewhat helpful. People wrap their hives in tar paper and black paper and insulation board and all that. You can do that too for the winter.
George, he's got some.
I've actually got tar paper in my car, a couple decent sized rolls. If anyone wants to take them or cut pieces off them, just
He's got tar paper. One of the ex-presidents, Keith, wraps all his hives in tar paper. He says that it allows the bees to move around better. in the hive to access the resources, but he's not running singles, he's running doubles. So I know when I'm running singles, the bees don't have any problem accessing the resources. Tar papers with Kevin.
Yeah.
So Kevin has a car somewhere.
I do have a car somewhere. I do have a car.
And he has tar
I
paper.
drive.
When you wrap a tar paper, you just put one layer.
One layer.
Do whatever you want, Sheena. You can wrap it 3 times if you want.
Right? It's not insulation. I'm gonna wrap it like crazy this year.
It actually is absorbing the sunlight.
Right. It's not insulation.
Heat theory is it's not insulation, but it absorbs the hot sunlight. It heats the hive up when the sun's out, which allows the bees to move around more effectively to access the resources that are in the hive, right? Because the cluster is sort of moving. If you're not running single, if my goal is just to have the cluster sit there. Honestly, I don't want the cluster to move at all. I just want them to sit there and be nothing for 4 months. Honestly, I'm even tempted to cage the queen. Honestly, but that's another crazy sort of thing you guys don't want to hear about. I don't want my queen like. You know what's going to happen? It's going to be like 4 days in January where it's like 80 degrees, right? Because global warming. And then what's going to happen? The queen's going to start to lay. That's what's going to happen to my hives. The alarm's going to go off. We're going to run out of food because the queen decided that it wants to start laying in January instead of February. So I'm tempted to put the cage. I'm tempted to put that queen in a cage and let her out like when she should start laying.
I can't wait to hear in the spring what happens.
I haven't done it. All my queens are running free right now, but I'm tempted to put the queen in the cage.
If she starts laying in February, then you got to break it open in February and try to get her out in the cold. Like, I don't understand how that works.
Don't worry about it. I'm still thinking it through.
I have a question over here. George?
Yes.
I thought in a colony, it's not the queen that decides when to lay, it's a colony.
Something, right? There's the colony to decide. Well, if the queen can't lay, the colony can decide whatever they want, and it's not going to
Don't
happen.
you trust the colony?
Well, I don't trust the colony because I don't trust the weather.
Okay, so if the queen, if they're gonna, you don't trust the weather, but if you trust how you're storing the bees to keep them surviving, don't you trust the colony that's surviving there to tell the queen when to lay?
I mean, this is
I've never
a good.
taken over the queen's job.
Yeah, no, and I send these crazy ideas to Ed sometimes, and Ed says, you know, George, this ain't worth thinking about. I said, thinking prevents Alzheimer's disease. But you're right. This whole philosophy of how much should the beekeeper intervene in their colony, right? And you have all different philosophies on that. To people that want to micromanage what's going on in their hive, i.e. caging the queen. You know, us doctorly like people who like to be in charge of things, right? You know, we want to cage the queen and we want to let the queen out on a certain day. So, and we have people
George
that
is 10 of 10.
I don't care. And then we have, and then we have, I do care. And then we have people that just, you know, feel like the colony should decide. If you want sustainable beekeeping, you need bees to be able to sustain and survive themselves without you intervening. There's truths to both sides of the question. I bring this up sort of tongue in cheek a little bit, but it's an idea that goes through my head a little bit. And you know, I'm running singles. And the reason why it does, I'm running singles and I have limited food resources in my hive. So the last thing I want is too much brood too early in the season and then run out of food. So what's one way I can control that? Just cage the queen. Let her out mid-February.
Feed your bees.
Can't we all laugh, right? I agree. I have been feeding bees this year, unfortunately. And I went over all that. Must-dos, to considers. You know, get your insulation on, remove your queen excluders, do your mouth guards, close your screen bottom boards, add fondant if really light, wrap your hives, duct tape. Thank you, Ernie, for saying duct tape, and dribble when broodless, which could be now.
Hi, I'm Sheena Canning. I'm the owner of Mellow Flora Massage, and I just wanted to show you how I make my salves for my massages. The salve is like an ointment. It's not like a lotion, and I think it gives me the grab and go I need in order to perform the massages I do. And I think you'll like it too. So I'm just going to go over a few steps that you can do at home to make a salve and customize it for yourself. So the first step I do is I infuse my olive oils. You can use a different base oil if you want, but that's what I choose. And that's going to take about 3 weeks. I have 2 different herbs here, as you can see. We're going to be talking about my calendula salve today. The other one is plantain. During the 3 weeks, I make sure that I have everything I need in order to make and package my salve tins. It's important to note that when you are steeping your herbs in your olive oil, that you have it in a cool, dark place, and then you stir it around every couple days or so. And I said 3 weeks, but really, sometimes I go longer.
Came through drippin', drip, drip. Came through drippin', drip, drip. Came through drippin', drip, drip. Diamonds on my wrist, they drippin', ice. Came through drippin', drip, drip. Came through drippin', drip, drip. Came through drippin', drip, drip. Diamonds on my wrist, they drippin', ice.
So here's where it gets exciting, folks. We're going to use some math. We're just going to figure out what 17% is of the amount of oil you have. And that's how much beeswax you're going to put in. That's the amount I use in order to have a good consistency and make sure it's not lumpy when I am trying to smooth it out in my palms. Here's another helpful tip. If you have a giant brick of beeswax, you can melt it all down into these cute shapes so that you can get the right quantities and not have to do any, grating of beeswax, which I used to do, which is horrible, or cutting, which is difficult. So this is the best way I've found to manage my beeswax. So that's the wax that's melting. I was adding the olive oil, the infused olive oil in there, and it re-solidified some of the wax. That's okay. Now I wanted to note that I have dedicated spoon and a dedicated bowl here for the double boiler. Double boiler. Yes. And that's just so that I can avoid, food contamination to my products. It might not be important to you if you're making this for personal reasons, but for me, it is important. This is dedicated to the salves I make. We want to make sure that the wax is completely melted before we take it off the heat. And then we can add the essential oils and maybe vitamin E. You don't need to add that in, but it's an option. So now we're ready to add the essential oils. I've let the oil and wax mixture cool a little bit, but not too much. It'll start to solidify again. And we're going to add some essential oils and vitamin E now. So I add some essential oils to this at this point. I don't do a whole heck of a lot just because I don't like a very strong scent. And I know a lot of clients do not like that either. That was lavender I added in, and clary sage before then. And then this is vitamin E oil. You can add that as a preservative to extend the shelf life of your cosmetic product. This shelf life of this is around a year. And you'll know it's gone bad if it starts to smell rancid. And so this vitamin E kind of helps it from getting to that point too quickly. And it's also really good for the skin for many reasons. Now I'm just showing off some cute pottery. I'm actually going to put some of this in the fridge so I can get it to solidify and we can test it to see if it's the right scent, because I like consistency from batch to batch. It's got a heavy calendula smell. So I like that, but I think I want to add a little more lavender. And you will drip some. Especially when you're trying to videotape at the same time. Good evening. Sheena here with some postscript. We're talking about the labeling requirements in the state. And you might want to look to make sure this is still current, but it was when I started doing this, okay? So you're supposed to have a front and back label if your product is a certain size, and this size counts, okay? It needs to have your logo, the name of the product, the net weight, and then again, your logo, your batch number. Each batch needs a separate identifying number, name of the product, your ingredients, and then there's a special warning you have to write verbatim. It says, warning, for external use only. The safety of this product has not been determined. All right, well, those are the things that you need on it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was informative. Feel free to ask me questions. I may or may not have the answer. All right, thanks a lot.
Does
Any
anybody
questions?
else want to see Sheena come up and sing in person?
I want
I do.
That was very therapeutic to watch. Like I felt like I was like, like posting these on like an Instagram or something. Yeah, you should definitely be making this regularly.
We should have a massage team going.
Yeah.
I will motion that.
A couple meetings ago, I showed you what my frame storage looked like, and it looked like this. And someone in the audience said, "Yeah, but isn't it like dark underneath that metal roof?" And it's like, yeah, it is, but there's a lot of light coming in from the bottom and from the sides, and so it should be fine. And then, so right after that meeting, I went back and pulled like some of those top frames out, and there were wax moths in them. Okay, that didn't that. So go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Because I went down to my handy dandy Lowe's and picked up some corrugated clear roofing material and replaced the metal with the clear roofing material. And that's what I ended up with. Next slide. That was the old one. You can see it's kind of dark, especially up to the top. Next slide. Not so dark anymore.
Yes.
Okay. So we are always learning, and your comments help us to improve what we do. Yeah, Tony.
That looks good now. Wait till you get about a foot of snow.
Yes, that's true.
Just reminding you, make sure you got enough supports, because that stuff is not very, I use it for blueberries. I put it around my blueberry. I had some snow there and it just pushed down because when it's supported.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You'll notice on the front part, there's multiple supports there. On the back part, I may end up putting a couple more supports in, but it also depends on the angle.
Yeah.
So the front angle is significant. It's like almost a 45-degree angle. The back angle is more like 25 degrees. So yeah, I'll have to put some more supports. And we're supposed to get a heavy snow year, according to the Farmer's Almanac. So there you go. And last slide.
Bye-bye.
And so to that point, if you make this standalone rack, you may end up needing a couple more sidebar or crossbars across the top, just to give it that physical support. Because you're right, this is not, I was not expecting this when I picked it up. I thought it was going to be much thicker. It wasn't going to be one of these. It was going to be like, and it's thinner than I had. Yeah, and I think you can buy the thick stuff, which would give much more structural integrity. But it's a heck of a lot more expensive. This is like $16 for this wide 2.5 foot by 8 foot. And I think the thicker stuff is like double the price.
That's not even a 4x8.
No, this is 2.5 by 8.
Huh.
And then you can also get them in like 2.5 by 16. If you go to Lowe's, you get one type. You go to Home Depot, you get exactly the same type. I think she had a couple other options, or you can order online. And, deal with that too. So that's all I have.
I'm George Wyman. I'm the chairman of the CCBA. And the board is selected by the membership. And the board, in theory, selects the president. The president runs the club. The board just intervenes when there's issues in the club. We've had a few in the last few years. There are 2 open positions. Janet is not running again. She's been on for 3 years. Janet, thank you.
Stand up, Janet.
And Pat has been on the board for the last year. He replaced Jarl when Jarl stepped down. So Pat's been on the board for a year. But those are the 2 openings, Janet's and Pat is elected to run again. Janet is elected not to run. But Chris is running for the board. So we have 2 openings and 2 candidates. So voting gets to be rather simple. If I could get a show of hands, who would like to vote for these 2 individuals to be part of the board? So be it. We now have 7 members on the board. We have 2 new members, 1 old replacement member and 1 new member. Board meets 4 times a year, discusses the general topics. The board has already met in October and selected the president for 2026.
We've got our quorum.
Okay, so thank you very much. We now have a new board. The board will meet and ratify this action. And there's not a lot of activity because we already got it set up for 2026.
Yes, thanks for joining the meeting today, and that brings us to the end of our meeting.